Welcome to episode 110 of the Eat for Endurance podcast, where we explore the connection between nutrition, performance, and health for busy, active people. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I am a board-certified sports dietitian and endurance athlete with over 10 years of experience working with teenage and adult athletes of all abilities. I started this podcast to provide evidence-based guidance, inspiring athlete stories, and practical tips on a wide variety of nutrition topics so that you can feel better, crush your endurance goals, and thrive as a human being. Today, I have an athlete nutrition profile for you featuring Ultrarunner, author, podcaster, and creative director, Angie Marie. I recently hired Angie and her business partner, Emily of Wild Puppy Creative Consulting, to advise me on a few things relating to this podcast and learned that Angie actually had a really interesting story to share, so I invited her on the show. After spending years of battling her body and forcing it to do more on less, and we've heard that story before, Angie had a life-threatening experience with birth control. This ultimately led her to heal her relationship with her body and to change the way that she moves, fuels herself, and adventures outdoors. We also touched on many other nutrition topics, including how to stay well-nourished when traveling frequently and at home, quick lunches on busy days, how to boost ferritin and vitamin D, how every food has its purpose, intuitive eating, and so much more. If you're enjoying this show, I would be so grateful if you could take a quick minute and give it a 5-star rating and review, and if you could share it with someone you think would enjoy this podcast too. All right, here is my chat with endurance athlete and adventure seeker, Angie Marie. Angie, welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. How's everything going with you today?
It's a little chaotic because I am getting ready for international travel, but honestly, I think I thrive on just a little bit of chaos. So things are great. What about you?
Good. It's Friday. I'm stoked. Had a very rainy run this morning, but always happy to get out there. Wait, so where are you going? Anywhere cool?
I'm visiting both Taiwan and Okinawa in Japan. Ooh. Everybody thinks I'm going for the skiing, but I'm not making it to the mainland of Japan. I will not see any snow, but definitely someday a future trip skiing in Japan for the Japao.
Oh, nice. Are you a big skier?
I am an intermediate plus skier, and I have been getting way more into it. I have what I call Ski Day Mondays in at least Q1 of 2025. Every single Monday I have blocked out, and I must go skiing if weather is drivable. So yes, I guess now I am embracing my ski era.
Awesome. And share with everyone where you're located, just so they have some context.
I'm in the Columbia River Gorge, which is where the Columbia River cuts through the Cascade Mountains in Oregon and Washington. So although I'm on the Washington side, I get my groceries in Oregon.
Nice. Love it. So I like to start these athlete nutrition profiles by kind of digging into your nutrition roots. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of growing up in terms of what memories you have surrounding food and meal times?
I was a very picky eater. I'm the oldest of 3 kids, and I would say all 3 of us were quite picky, and I'm not really sure where that came from. My mom stayed at home when I was growing up, and she would cook our meals for us, but at some point, as pretty much early as I can remember, my dad and my mom would have their quote-unquote adult food, and the 3 of us kids would have some sort of, less vegetable, probably more like a pasta type of meal. And I never thought about food as fuel or what it's doing for me. I just thought, I'm hungry, I'll take a bagel and move on with my life. I do remember starting to feel a little bit more of that weight or emotion connected with food in middle school to high school. And that's when I was getting more involved with track and field and finding a core group of friends. And I remember hearing just some problematic comments that, your mind is a sponge at that age and honestly your whole life. And so I would just hear little problematic things from my friends or 17 magazine, and those would stay in my head and not come up to the surface until later on in college. Even thinking about my parents, they never explicitly told me anything about the morality of food or what's good or what's bad, but I was picking up on things like them doing, I think it was the South Beach diet where you temporarily restrict carbs altogether. And they never said anything about doing that as a family, like for their 3 children, but still seeing my teenage self, seeing them temporarily cutting out carbs for weeks at a time, I think planted something in my brain of, oh, maybe that's what you're supposed to do to be healthy.
Yeah. And so you mentioned track and field, what kinds of activities did you enjoy doing when you were younger, like even before high school?
Oh, so my first memory of running is actually when I did karate. One of my
Cool.
two truths and a lie. One of my truths in that is that I have two black belts in karate. And when I started at age 6, I was one of the only girls in the class, but I was also one of the fastest. Once every month or so, they would have us go out barefoot on the asphalt parking lot. There was this old
Mhm.
brick building where the dojo was, and they would just have us do these sprinting laps around. I don't know how this really related to karate, but we just did what we were told. Yes, sensei. And I just
Yeah,
have
yeah.
these great early memories of small 6+ year old Angie lapping the building, passing the boys, being known as the fast girl. And so to me, I felt so strong in my body starting at 6 years old. I mean, karate, obviously, it's an art form, and it's exercise, and it's strength building. So it gave me a really good sense of what it felt like to be mentally and physically strong. And I think it also instilled that pride in me for being a girl in a boy dominated area. It gave me that confidence of
Mhm.
like, you can't tell me that this isn't for girls because I'm here and I'm beating them at the running.
Love it. Awesome, awesome. And so when did like actual running enter the picture in terms of like joining track and field and doing that kind of stuff?
Freshman year of high school, I had never run intentionally before. Running had popped up, just playing pickup soccer or running in the field with my siblings or my friends, hide and seek type thing. And then
Mhm.
I tried out for softball with a friend spring of freshman year of high school, without knowing even the rules of softball. Obviously, we didn't make the team. We had no idea what we were doing. So we thought, well, track doesn't have tryouts. I guess we'll just roll over into track. That ended up being probably one of the best decisions of my life, because track and field is in my opinion, one of the most welcoming sports cultures, especially compared to field hockey, which I also played, that had not as welcoming of a culture. And so to
Mhm.
find a group of friends who not only would spend time outside exercising together, but having pasta parties together, cheering each other on at track meets, making posters for each other, wearing your uniforms, and you're making t-shirts before a big meet. I had so much sense of community, probably for the first time in my life, more so than karate, more so than field hockey. Track carried me through high school socially and physically.
And did that carry on to college as well? You're running track?
I ended up shifting to ultimate frisbee in college. So here's the thing with high school me, I was so afraid to try. And honestly, I think I still carry some of that in me now, and probably connected to a fear of failure, right? But I thought,
Mhm,
okay,
mhm.
I love the social aspects of track. I love that I have a community that I belong to, but oh my gosh, what if I really push myself in the 800 meters and I look like an idiot? Or what if the best I can do is actually not fast enough, quote unquote? So I really feel like I missed a lot of potential in high school,
Mm.
and because of those mental blocks. I also know for a fact, in retrospect, I was not fueling well at all for a high schooler or for a woman or for a human, probably. And I knew nothing about nutrition. So when I went into college, I thought, okay, I'm not that competitive. I don't want to try my hardest. I still like the social aspect. Let's find another community. The problem was I was also then starting to integrate all of those weird messages from 17 magazine, Cosmo, seeing my parents on the South Beach diets, remembering my friends in high school talking about how peanut butter was going to make you slower in your track race. All of those messages
Oh
really
gosh.
came to head and
Yeah.
yeah, in college. And so even though I was still doing sports for fun and for community, I also started to get really into going to the gym, over exercising, over analyzing every morsel of food that would go into my body. So although I still found joy and fulfillment in many ways through sports and movement and running, I was also starting to get overly obsessed with numbers and tracking, and so much so that I found myself making excuses for my behavior, or even saying no to certain social plans because I was like, well, I have to squeeze in a few extra miles. So it was a very classic. I'm sure you hear this a lot with your
Yes.
athletes. Yeah. And I have the language now. And towards the end of that period of my life, I realized that I was struggling with orthorexia, which I never got an actual diagnosis for. Not even sure if they actually diagnose people with orthorexia these days. But between that and getting red S, I kind of went through probably what a lot of your athletes do.
Yeah. So let's like dig a little deeper there. So you're in Boston, right?
Yes.
For college? Yep. Talk me through, let's explore this a little bit more in terms of your college experience. Cause I mean, I was listening to you on For the Long Run, and you mentioned going to Moab and kind of taking some time away just because you were struggling so much. And maybe you can kind of share some bits and pieces of like moving through that time of your life and kind of what that looked like.
I have so much compassion for like 20s, early 20s Angie right now. I feel so sad, which is partly why I'm happy to share these experiences for hopefully preventing other women and girls to go through what I went through. But when I think about that chapter of my life, so mid-college and into the years past college, I think about probably what was a lot of self-esteem issues that I never really connected, and not knowing how to take care of myself as a woman who is very active, right? So those years, I think about the fatigue that I felt. I think about the weird, mysterious digestion problems that I was going through. And I remember going to the registered dietitian in our campus healthcare at Northeastern University, and her basically being like, well, I don't know, track all of your granola bars and write every ingredient you take down. And, if you skip your period, that's normal. That happens. I mean, that this is this is not
how long ago was this?
This was probably 2011 to 2013. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have come a long way, like with Reds and just knowing about underfueling, but yikes.
Totally, yeah. Yeah. And, so there are all those physical symptoms. But again, that preoccupation of always thinking, ooh, is what I'm about to eat going to make me less healthy? Is it going to make me more healthy? Do I deserve, quote unquote, to go out to eat with friends? What if there's not a good option for me? And my anxiety really actually came to a head when I was at the finish line of the Boston Marathon bombings. And although that wasn't directly related to my food or my food mindset, it definitely added that extra element in my life of being preoccupied with my health, because for the first time in my life, I felt like my safety was at stake. Even just being in a city, I had some pretty bad post-traumatic stress from witnessing the bombings. And all of this happening at a time. Yeah, I was a block and a half away from the first bombing. So it was, okay.
I ran that year. This was my first year running Boston. Mm-hmm. And thankfully I had a really pretty good day that year and finished, I think I was like 30 minutes before the bomb went off, but I was like really hurting and just like walking really, really slow and shuttling down and like going around the block and going to the place, where you meet up with your family and everything. But the following year I had a really bad day and I finished like right around the time the bomb would have gone off. So I'm just like so grateful that like, So
yeah, it's one of those things you like intense. Start thinking, the butterfly effect movie, right? I think about that one all the time, Ashton Kutcher. Yeah. But it truly could have been anyone. And I think I was already at a point in my life where I was feeling fragile for several reasons. And then to see like, oh, that could have been me. That I had wanted to run the Boston Marathon that year, but I kept getting injured. Again, I wasn't feeling enough. So it just sort of created this really weird mental space of like, I don't feel safe in my body for several reasons. I don't feel confident in the way that I'm treating my body as still an athlete, but one that was definitely underfueled, and, questioning my decisions with the classes I was studying. I was studying environmental science and have not used that degree, to be honest. There were the classic boy problems. All of it just came. I was in such a tense place in my life that I thought, I just need to get out of here. I just need a few months, I thought, to go out and go somewhere else. So I moved to Utah, Moab, Utah, beautiful red rock country. I went there to learn how to become a raft guide for people with disabilities for a nonprofit rafting outfitter. And that was a very life-changing experience. And although I started to feel better in some aspects of my life, I still brought some of those habits of overexercise, underfueling. I remember waking up on mornings before raft trips to go run for 9 miles and, throw down a small breakfast and then go row all day on a river. It was just like constant movement. But I was so busy that I couldn't give myself the time to figure out my own red flags.
And so what is it that kind of, and I'm sure that it took a lot of time, but what kind of got you out of this whole.
Mm-hmm. This is where I think my story is more unique because I'm a total menstrual cycle nerd. And when people ask, how did you get into menstrual cycles? Believe me, never thought that I would be so passionate about this reproductive function of my body. But it is actually what helped me heal, but not before I hit a rock bottom. So over those few years, dealing with the self-image and not having the words for what I was experiencing, having terrible stress fractures, IT band syndrome, the preoccupation, the racing thoughts about, is what I'm eating not good for me? All of that. It just followed me to Moab. And I was living in Salt Lake City at the time one winter, and I started to feel some weird twinges in my uterus area. I was seeing some spotting. The thing is, I had been missing my period for over a year because of REDS. I had everything, right? The stress fractures, the low energy, the missing menstrual cycle. It's like, it was all there. And still I found excuses of, they tell you in health class in 7th grade that skipping periods is normal. They never tell you about the benefits of having a menstrual cycle. So I thought, okay, maybe this is what it means to be healthy. Maybe this is what it means to be an athlete, is missing your menstrual cycle. So when I started to feel these twinges and seeing some spotting, I thought, well, maybe my body's just normalizing. Maybe I'm getting my period back after all of this time. Well, fast forward a few days and I'm in the ER because it turns out I had had an ectopic pregnancy while I had an IUD in for birth control. And this is something that is very unlikely to happen, but it is a risk that you sign off on when you are getting your birth control. And every single type of birth control has a failure rate, right? Condoms can fail, the pill can fail, even if used correctly. And my IUD had just failed one day after working for a couple of years. So I end up in the ER. They remove my fallopian tube in emergency surgery because I had all this internal bleeding and the tube had ruptured from the pregnancy.
God.
I remember waking up in the maternity ward of all places at 24 years old, realizing I knew nothing about my body. I knew that I wasn't fueling myself well, wasn't making any change about it. I knew nothing about my menstrual cycle, and ignoring it had gotten me nowhere. And I just felt like at that point, it was rock bottom. I couldn't trust my body, didn't feel safe in my body, didn't know how to treat it, didn't know how to treat it with kindness. I thought, how am I supposed to, right now, right? I was recovering from surgery. I wasn't even allowed to cope with that anxiety by running. I couldn't get outside. I had to rest in bed and heal. And all of a sudden I was like, I don't even know anymore. I don't know who I am without moving. I don't know what my relationship to moving actually is. How could it be healthy? And what actually got me out of that was, again, becoming total menstrual cycle nerd, reading every book I could about my reproductive system, listening to podcasts. Those were the first podcasts I ever listened to were about the body. I started listening to birth stories and podcasts and books about pregnancy. I got so enamored with how my reproductive system worked. And the short story is that the more information I got, the more empowered I felt about understanding my body and having the language to say why I felt the way I did. And look at all of these messages I'm getting from society that are trying to hide and suppress and neglect these parts of my body. No wonder I felt so at odds with myself all of these years. And, I don't want to make it sound like it was this overnight mindset shift. It took many months. It took probably years to get through. But next thing you know, I'm starting to notice how my body feels when I'm fueling it enough, how my body feels when I give it how it feels when I give it time to rest, how it feels if I'm paying attention to my vital signs like the menstrual cycle. And ever since then, I have not been injured. I've been stronger than ever. I've been able to train for ultras and even a 100-mile race and fuel myself and feel amazing during it. And so in the end, I'm happy I went through what I went through, even though it was hard at the time, because now I know that so much more is possible for myself and other women than I was told by 17 magazine.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's such a thing to go through in your early 20s. And I too, I have such compassion for my younger self that was just so lost and so distraught and all of that. And, it sucks that it takes an experience like that to really turn things around. But we hear that a lot. A lot of the times that's where the actual meaningful change happens. That kind of nothing's snapping you out of anything. Obviously, it's a very long and hard process, but it definitely seems like it opened your eyes to all of these possibilities and all these wonderful things about your body, not things that you're trying to suppress or ignore or numb out or whatever it is. One thing that I think so many people struggle with is like a changing body and body size, body image and all of that. And just because this literally comes up in almost every session I have with, well, actually not all of my clients, but some of my clients, there's a lot of body struggle. And so when someone's recovering from REDS or any underfueling situation and you start to refeed and eat more and all of that, it's like, yeah, you can experience all of those amazing things like the increased energy and feeling, just like regaining your health and wellness and everything. But the body changing, that can be scary. And you mentioned trust. And so that's where I think the trust piece can be a little tricky because you want to trust your body or have this sense of trust in your body, but it's changing on you. And I'm curious, like what experiences you have with that from your story.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm unique in this or if it's just the way that my body reacts, but really my body from, a visual sense, it hasn't changed that much through most of my life. And even during those times when I was underfueling to now, I don't think most people would necessarily notice a difference if I was standing side by side. I mean, I'm probably glowing more now, right? But but yeah, in reality, I mean, I think that's fair to say too, is like for some people, their body is more prone to change, like visually and composition wise. And for me, it just never really actually changed that much. But what did change was the way that I saw my own body and the way that I felt within it. So, one example I think about is I got into the book Intuitive Eating, and
yeah,
that was mind blowing for me. I'm reading it and I'm like, sure, like this is going to work. And it said, I think the classic example in there is if you always want ice cream and you never let yourself have it, of course, you're going to go nuts on ice cream whenever you get your hands on it. So what if you tried just keeping ice cream in your freezer at all times and know that you can have it whenever you want it? And I thought, like, that's going to work. And then it totally worked, right? I got myself a pint of ice cream. Have a few spoonfuls one night, be like, I don't actually want the rest of this. I'd think about it the next day. I don't know if I want that. And then 2 days in a row, I'd want more of it. And it just balanced out, right? Once I realized I can have the cookie, I can have the lettuce, I can have whatever the frig I want anytime. It just totally, it was mind blowing to me. And it sounds so simple. And I don't know how I could have learned that as a child and as an adolescent and on the track team, right? I don't know where I would have gotten those resources, which is, I think, why it's important for people like you to be collecting these stories so that we can tell our daughters, our kids, the next generation, our stories on how we can fix it. But yeah, I think I'm probably, your classic case of just suddenly learning about all of these different tools that can help through podcasts, through blogs. But I might be different in the sense of I forced myself to go it alone. And I do wish that I had hired a registered dietitian or someone to help me through that. I think it would have accelerated the healing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like as I've, had all of these conversations over 5 years now and heard various versions of stories of like coming back from underfueling and all that, it's interesting to hear like people who have sought professional help and who haven't, and just how their experiences have differed and everything. But I mean, obviously it's wonderful if you can get professional help, but sometimes it's really interesting. I mean, and it's like, including in your case, how we see people really just move or make so much incredible progress and change on their own, which I mean, I always admire because it's such hard work to do, right? But obviously in certain cases, like when medically necessary, like that's obviously not an option. I want to shift gears for a minute because one thing I read on your website, like you call yourself an endurance athlete and an adventure seeker. And I'm curious, like what that means to you. And we can talk about some of the adventures and athletic things that you've done and kind of the nutrition to support all that. But first, I kind of just want to start with like, what does that mean exactly?
Well, as far as the endurance athlete side, I always like to think how I'm not trying to go the furthest or the fastest or be the first to do anything, but I do want to have the most fun. And for me, endurance is fun because what else? I mean, I have nothing else to think about if I'm just thinking about going out for a few hours, putting one step in front of the other. It's almost like escapism, except instead of numbing out, I'm like numbing in or not numbing in now. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like actually spending time like listening to my breath, noticing my pace, noticing my effort. So for me, endurance is sort of just that self-care time. And it's a way for me to have fun, whether it's by myself or with other friends. I don't know if you've seen, do you know Semi-Rad, Brendan Leonard? He's so he has his uphill and downhill athlete. I think it's an essay. And I thought it was so funny because he talks about how there are downhill people. And these downhill people love the adrenaline, the thrill, think about your mountain bikers, your whitewater kayakers. And then you have your uphill people who are often slow trail runners will sign up for these really long races. And even when I'm ski touring, I love the uphill possibly more than the downhill. So for me, uphill is fun. I love being an uphill person. I think off the trails and off the road, I am still a metaphorical uphill person. And so endurance just really fits in with my life really well compared to sprinting or something faster paced or more adrenaline. And then as far as adventure seeker, I personally do believe that adventure is a mindset as well as a physical thing that you can go on. I think it's a state of being. And I just thrive on novelty and experimentation and learning. And I just feel like if I can bring in that little dose of adventure into everyday life, as well as, going to Taiwan tomorrow, or I went to Everest Space Camp for my 30th birthday, like how can I add in those micro and macro adventures into my life? And I just know that that's what makes me feel most like me.
I love that. Does that mentality shift over into nutrition for you? That kind of adventure seeking, fun, that kind of stuff?
That's a great question. And I think it goes, for me, nutrition's gone in seasons. And so, obviously I went through all of the ups and the downs and eventually stabilized out to being what I think I'm still mostly an intuitive eater. But I've noticed that when it comes to really those more macro adventure seasons of my life, I start to actually struggle. Maybe you can help me with this. It's like, I'll get a little bit less mindful about what I'm eating because I get into that adventure mode of like, just fuel enough, like get all the calories and carbs that you need, get them while you can. And I've noticed that sometimes that means I, haven't taken the time because I'm busy packing for a trip or whatever. I haven't taken the time to stock the fridge. And I end up being like, well, shit, I only have like a handful of tortillas and some cheese. I guess I'm having like 5 quesadillas today and I have nothing else. And so that's been my biggest challenge lately because I've been so go on. I'm in like really kind of go mode right now and getting all these awesome races and trips and everything. And I love that. But where I'm struggling is how can I make sure I'm still getting all my micro and macronutrients in when I'm so busy? And my hack for that has actually been investing in occasional meal delivery service, like one of those ones where they send you all the ingredients and over 10 minutes you assemble it and you fall. Yeah. And that was honestly such a game changer for me. But where I'm struggling is like the weeks that I don't do that. I don't want to do that every week because it's expensive. But the weeks that I don't do it, I fall right back into that trap of like, oh, all I have is granola and some milk. I guess I can have that. It's like, what do I do, Claire?
Yeah. Well, no, this is a great topic because like even in my new monthly nutrition membership, Fuel for Life crew, we had this like huge discussion on like lunches because everyone was just like, oh my God, I am not doing a good job because I have nothing available. I'm busy. Like maybe they're working from home or whatever. And they're just like, I open my pantry and it's like, I guess I'm having cereal for lunch, so I mean, there are a few things here. So actually one of my most popular blog posts and freebies it's geared towards travel, but it's like really anytime you're on the go, but it's about snacks. But I have this whole checklist at the end of this post and also the freebie of like basically how to stock your fridge, freezer, and pantry so that like if you're on a trip, and because obviously you don't want all the food to go bad, you don't want to overbuy, and then you come home and there's like nothing around. So it's like, how can you like stock your kitchen appropriately so that you can throw together some great meals like right before you go and still not have everything like go to waste. And then when you get back, before you go to the grocery store or get delivery or whatever, you have some stuff there. So that's a really handy guide. It's over on my website for any listeners who want to eatforendurance.com. I think it's like travel snack ideas and checklists or something like that. But I think it's also the ability to kind of get a little bit creative. It's having the right things available. So like, again, having things stocked. And then it's as in the case where we were talking with the people in my membership for lunch, it's like, can we think of like quick, easy things to make, not approach it with like too much of a perfectionist mindset because sometimes I'll work with people and they're just like, oh, I need to have all the quote unquote right things, and it's like, sometimes you just need something quick, just make a quick sandwich, like literally today I had to eat a quick lunch before I hopped on with you. And I had a little bit of turkey and I had cheese. I didn't have enough turkey. So I put like cheese and hummus and avocado and greens and I added some other stuff on the side to like round it all out. And, so like, it doesn't have to be complicated. And then I think with sometimes the other piece is like prep. And not everyone likes to do prep, but it can be helpful, and you can just make it as simple as possible and choose one thing. But I feel you. I also struggle here. Just so you're not alone, Angie. I too am struggling all the time with lunches if I'm not on top of it. It's hard. It's really hard, especially when you're juggling all the things, you know?
Yeah, but that's such a good example of a mindset shift. Like 10 years ago, I would have shuddered at the thought of having a bunch of convenience foods available, right? I think something around like, oh, like, those must not be good for longevity, or there's too many preservatives or whatever. And now I'm like, Trader Joe's microwavable or oven meals save my life.
Yes.
I would not be getting enough food if I didn't stock my pantry and my fridge with quote unquote convenient foods. Like there is nothing wrong. Like I need convenient foods right now. Yeah. And that's going to be better than anything else.
Last night, yeah, like perfect example. Last night I had a nutrition presentation, didn't end until 5:15. My kids were already home. We needed to eat dinner. Like I think Trader Joe's has these frozen little chicken gyoza things, and I had their like miso ginger broth, and I threw some spinach and edamame in there, and like boom. Is it the best dinner ever? No, but and then I put like sesame seeds and the chili crunch stuff. It was tasty. Like it was fine. It served the purpose. You know what I mean? So like, do we want to eat like that every day? No, but like it's fine. Like it's not going to kill you. And what's like more harmful is not eating. So,
exactly. And what you just said there of like serve the purpose, that is what like running has taught me about fueling myself. Is the meal that I'm making has to have enough carb, enough fat, enough protein to help me serve the purpose of training for this race. And I actually think, although I've done a handful of 50Ks and 55Ks before my big 100-miler race, and I was aware of how I was in a much better place with nutrition, I think the 100-mile training really put that to the test of like, when you're running that amount of volume, how do you make sure that you're getting enough and that it's serving a purpose?
Today's show is brought to you by my virtual private practice, Eat for Endurance. I've been working with a wide range of active people for over a decade now to help them feel their best in their everyday and athletic lives, and I would love to help you as well. I have services to fit many different needs and budgets. If you haven't grabbed all of my free nutrition downloads yet, go to my website, eatforendurance.com, and do that right now. You'll get some great guides on a variety of everyday and sports nutrition topics for literally $0. I have a new nutrition membership as well called Fuel for Life Crew. That's just $30 a month, and you're going to get to join a small but growing community of busy, active people just like you, and you have direct access to me to answer all of your nutrition questions. You also get all of my paid nutrition resources included, plus live monthly calls on different topics that you help choose, and they are recorded in case you can't attend. And of course, I also work one-to-one with nutrition clients if you need personalized support. In one-to-one coaching, we explore your unique history, we assess you as a whole person in the context of your busy life, and strategize how to achieve realistic, sustainable health and performance goals. We deep dive into everyday eating, sports nutrition, gut health, lab work, body image, and whatever else you need to feel and perform your best. If you're curious what my past clients have to say about working with me, head on over to my testimonial page on eatforendurance.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. Well, so let's dive into 100-miler training or any of your ultra training. Like maybe you can share a little bit about, what are your favorite kind of sports nutrition products? Because like you weren't always an ultra runner or long distance runner. You kind of gradually made that shift, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to hear about how nutrition has evolved. Any like really key learning moments, maybe with race nutrition or training nutrition, anything you want to share there?
So going back to the convenience aspect, those Fairlife chocolate milks that's shelf stable, those changed everything for my 100 because, I'm taking out hours of my day for sometimes out of my work day to go fit in a run. I'll have to pop on a meeting or, maybe there's a podcast interview, something like that. I'm like, well, I don't have time to even cook one of those convenient meals. And I know how important it is for me to get carb and protein right after a long run. Chocolate milk, shelf stable, everything. That was everything. But something else I noticed too was the benefit of certain foods that I might have used to be afraid of or, weary of or maybe judgmental of. And the one that comes to mind, Coca-Cola. Okay. I had never thought that I don't like Coke on a day-to-day basis. I just don't love the taste or the carbonation. But after a summer training run or during the 100-miler, Coca-Cola changed my life. It got me the sugar, it got me the caffeine. And so I just really I think training for the 100 gave me this aha moment of, again, every food has a purpose. Every drink has a purpose. Am I matching it to the right purpose? And Coca-Cola fulfilled the purpose that I needed it to fulfill many times. So I know a lot of people, I shudder when I see like certain dietitians or, health coaches shitting on soda because maybe you don't want to have soda every day. Not good for your teeth, not whatever. But there are times where soda actually was really good for me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Coca-Cola, chocolate milk. What are some other go-tos for you when you're running?
Yeah, I'm a dabbler. So maybe this actually is a good example of how does your like adventurous mindset fit into nutrition. I do not have a lot of like brand loyalty. I don't have a lot of snack loyalty. I am always mixing it up. And so sometimes I'll get really on the Stroop waffle train. And sometimes I love making Kodiak cakes. Oh, I know you like Kodiak cakes too, don't you, Claire? So
I love Kodiak cakes.
I love batching Kodiak cakes, and I'll sometimes throw in some extra syrup or something just to add more sugar to it. And then I'll just have cold pancakes while running. And they're great because they're moldable. They can fit in my vest in whatever pocket. They don't crumble. I can just put in like a big strip of pancake. It's so good. Yeah. So that's been one of my favorites for long runs too. And then what I got into, especially during 100 training, was just noticing more, how can I increase carbs? Because I realized I wasn't actually having within the recommended amount of carbs per hour for that amount of training. So I really tried to focus on getting ahead of what those amount of carbs would be per hour. So making sure I'm taking a bite every few minutes before I'm actually feeling any hunger at all. And then as well as electrolytes. I had never thought about electrolytes in my life until the 100. And I knew that it would be really, really important for several reasons. So I got a lot more into preloading electrolytes and having them on an everyday basis. Just being more mindful of increasing the things that I knew would need to be increased with that amount of running.
Do you have any favorite electrolyte products?
I love Element. I actually got probably a podcaster that we both know have them as a sponsor. And I was like, maybe I should try this. And the second I tried it, I was like, oh yeah, this is much better than the others I've been having. But I will say for my race, just with the amount of milligrams of sodium in Element, I didn't want to be only using that. So I used mostly Noon while running from aid station to aid station. And then I would sometimes have some Element at the aid station.
Got it. Cool. Awesome. Are you doing any like gels or chews or bars, anything like that?
I can't stomach gels. I think I've only tried a gel once in my life. And I remember as soon as it went down, I was like, this is not going to stay down. So I actually really like, I've gotten into the bonk breaker chews recently because of John for the long run. He likes them. And so but the thing is also Welch's fruit snacks, right? Like sometimes I'm like, if I'm in the grocery store, exactly. So again, like not loyal to any particular brand, but I am right now pretty loyal to making sure that I have a variety of both salty and sweet foods on me. There was another one that John had in his like running Fuel Goods box, and
Fuel Goods, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a mango chili spicy granola bar. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like it wasn't bad. I don't know if I would get them often, but I thought it was fun to add, usually I'm like salty or sweet, and to throw something spicy in there. I was like, well, this mixes it up. That's fun.
I feel like I wouldn't want that while running though.
Yeah, well, sort of Element has a mango chili flavor too, I think. So it's interesting to see. Maybe that's a trend that's up and coming, and maybe runners want more spicy food.
I have no idea. Yeah, normally I'm like shying away from spice, but maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, I want spice after for sure. Probably not before.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so you've done some ultra stuff. You did your 100. Like, so do you feel like at this point, are you kind of into all different types of running, or do you feel very settled on like a certain distance or a certain terrain, or are you kind of open to all things?
Well, right now I'm training for a bike race, and this is new to me. I am, maybe I should stop saying this and I need to manifest something better, but I keep calling myself an inefficient biker, and I'm definitely learning. So let's just say I'm learning how to be more efficient on the bike, and it has been quite a challenge. And not only the physical mechanics of like riding a bike efficiently, but also eating while on the bike, right? Like I've been going out for several hour rides, and I see all my experienced biking friends, like just, they have that cool little cinch bag on the frame, and they pull out their snacks that are already like repackaged. And I'm just like, I'm literally wearing my running vest as I'm biking, and I'm like fishing around for like my Stroop waffle or my pancakes. And so I haven't actually figured out how to best fuel while on a bike. And that's kind of the next, I think, maybe the next thing I learn about nutrition.
So I love that you're saying this because this is actually something I will probably soon be experiencing because my whole thing, and I know, I've been swimming more, but I am contemplating signing up for my first triathlon in August. And so I was like, oh, why bother with the sprint? I may as well do the Olympic. I mean, I don't even own a freaking bike or a wetsuit or anything. So like, I mean, I obviously know how to ride a bike, but I really have not been on a bike very much. And I am terrified of like clipping it and falling over.
Me too.
Like, I have, my husband's like, you can use my road bike. And I'm like, the last time I was on a road bike and I was clipped in, we were in New York City and we were going up to the GW Bridge and there was this little hill. And I swear, like I started going up it and my bike just stopped. I went, boom, I just like fell over on my knee. And I was, of course, like I was training for some marathon. I was like hysterical because I thought like my knee was done. And I don't know. So I have not been on a road bike and certainly not clipped into anything unless it's like my Peloton since then. So yeah, I'm really curious how this all works out, but I'm so scared of crashing. And then when the thought of feeding myself and drinking on the bike is like next level. So I think it would be really good though, because I work with so many triathletes. I'm constantly hounding them to eat things. And it's like, I need to like actually experience this and how hard it is.
That's fair.
Because I have a lot of my cyclists are like complaining like, oh, I don't want to stop or like, I can't do this because the train's too difficult or whatever. So yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of explore that.
I think that maybe I'll up the like baby food type of snacks, like the packets.
Yep.
Yeah. Is it baby food? Like, what do we call those types of
pouches,
puree
food? I don't know.
Yeah. I might just like live the puree life. Yeah. I think that might be easier because I don't know. I'm still afraid smoothies. Of riding with no hand. I definitely can't ride with no hands. Like I'm going to have to just.
Well, oh yeah. Cause like, how can you do one hand? Well, I guess you use your teeth. I mean, yeah.
That's what I've been doing. Yeah. I like rip it open with one hand. Yeah. So it's either I change my food or I change my fear.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. The Noka smoothies are really good. I don't know if you've seen those, but it's basically like baby food, but with a little bit of protein in it.
Ooh. Okay.
But it's a pouch, but it has like a little twisty thing. But like, so yeah, that's the part is like, you need another, like, I don't even think you could put it in, I wouldn't want like you choking on it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm like trying to imagine, like, can you put that in your mouth and twist it? No, I don't know.
I mean, if anyone's listening and you have a business idea, please take it and run with it. And, maybe the key is just repackaging everything and like prepping those twist offs or something.
I do know people do that. And I'm trying to think what else people do. I know people put like liquid gels and squeeze a bunch into a bottle.
Oh.
Then like companies like Precision have like those like gels. I mean, I know you're not doing gels, but they have like those flow packs or whatever, or that little bite valves. So they'll like put a bite valve on a gel. So you're just like literally biting it. But yeah, I don't know. I am also new to all of this. I don't have the answer.
Well, in triathlon, you have to start thinking about swimming. I guess you don't want to eat like too much right before swimming, right? But then you need to.
I know. Yeah. So it's been actually really interesting for me because yesterday was the second time I swam over an hour. And so I'm getting into these like much longer swims, which is, first of all, I seriously can't believe I'm doing this. Like I'm still in shock that my body is like able to swim for an hour straight. But it's really interesting, the whole idea of like eating. And I guess I'm like, for now, I'm just doing like liquid nutrition because that's just so easy. And I think I'll probably just stick with that. And then of course in triathlon, it's not like you're eating while you swim anyways. But yeah, it's been kind of uncharted territory, like for me to actually be figuring out nutrition for myself. Like I've done it for other people, but for doing it for me, like figure out what works in a swim has been kind of fun. So we shall see where it goes. Okay. So you have a big bike race. Where is this bike race?
It's on the east side of Mount Hood. So what's cool is that my 100-mile race was up. It was also on the east side of Mount Hood, and I'll just be a little bit lower in elevation than that. So it feels like I'm really giving my backyard some love right now, which is cool. And they call it, so it's a gravel bike race, and they call it Gucci gravel because it's like really nice condition out there. And I've only done one gravel race before, and it was not Gucci gravel. It was like lava rock and sand and mountain biking. It was 40 something miles of hell.
Oh gosh. Oh my God. Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other fun things on your calendar?
So yes, just this morning. So here's the thing, right? That fear of trying and that fear of what if I try and fail and what does that mean about me?
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
I thought that my 100 would be a way to really push myself to my max and to prove to myself, like, look, you have to try, and there's nothing to be afraid of, and all of that. And then I ended up, people hate when I say this, but the 100 was not as bad as I thought it would be. And I'm starting to think, well, maybe it's because, there was plenty of walking. I was doing it with a friend. So I had the morale. I had a crew of like 10 or 12 people who would meet me at aid station. I have the best friends. It's so great. And I was like, maybe the challenge is to do something still long, but faster. So now I'm obsessed with the idea of a 50 miler. And I have a 50 miler down in Sisters, Oregon, that it's in August. And I'm really thinking that might be the perfect one because my bike race is in April. That gives me a few months to train for my August 50. And then maybe my 50 is the time for me to really face that fear of trying, go fast, see it, like leave it all out there and, not have to do anything overnight, which is nice.
Yeah. Awesome. So in terms of like going back to race nutrition just for a second or performance nutrition, so you do the Choose Element, which of course doesn't have carbs, Coke. Are you going for foods at all then? Or like what other kinds of carbs and things you're getting in?
Yeah, my stomach is thankfully very resilient. So I can pretty much eat anything. I've had pizza. I've had, I think I had a burrito once. Like I'm totally fine.
Oh my God, you're one of those people.
I know. I'm very lucky. The thing is though, I had to train for that, right? Like, they talk about training your stomach. And I think when I first started doing 50, I think that's when I tried the gel, was the very first 50K that I ever signed up for pre-pandemic. And I remember being like, oh, well, ultra marathoners, they have gels, right? And I tried the gel and I was like, okay, I'm not going to be that type of runner. So I think I started off with just like Cliff Bars or whatever. And then I thought but I really love cheese. Like, should I get some cheese in? And tolerated that. So I just kept on tolerating more and more. And now I'm pretty much good with whatever. But I do still really like cheese. I just love the taste of it. I know I want mostly carbs, but having a little bit of fat feels good to me while I'm running as well. So lately salty pretzels with cheese, like making little sandwiches as I'm running. Those are really good. Cool. Yeah. I've made homemade granola bars before as well. Like my first 50K, I remember making a lot of homemade foods. And one of my favorites was the Shalane Flanagan's superhero muffins in Eat Fast, Run Slow. And I would just make my own variations of superhero muffins and just experiment with different fillings, different types of flours. So yeah, pretty much I can do anything and I feel happy about it, but I'm always open to experimenting with new brands, new homemade recipes. It's fun.
Love that. And, speaking of kind of the fear of failure thing, I just want to call out one thing that I love that you said to me, because just for listener context, Angie and her business partner, Emily of Wild Poppy, have been working with me on the podcast. And so one thing they said to me was stop owning yourself, Claire. And I was like, I only have this many followers and I only have blah, blah, blah. Not really. I mean, I wasn't trying to kind of diminish myself or whatever, but I think I was just putting myself in the context of people who were doing similar things, but bigger. It was more of a relative thing. But yes, it was very much in the end, diminishing what I've accomplished. And so I really just liked that kind of where you guys were stop it, snap out of it, stop owning yourself. So yeah, I don't know. I think it definitely resonates what you're saying, kind of this, being fearful to try things and just going for stuff. And it's really exciting when you finally get to the point in your life where you start to be ready to make those scary jumps and just go for things. So yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely feeling that a little bit more these days, which is great. Feeling the exciting stuff and less of the fear of failure part. I mean, maybe it's a little bit around still, but Yeah.
And I think it'll always be there a little bit. For me, part of the fear is knowing that, over a decade now, I was so obsessed with numbers and tracking, and I'm so afraid of falling back into that. And I don't think I will. I think I have enough tools in my toolbox now to take care of myself and notice if things start popping up. Here's one, this feels really vulnerable to share, but I'll do it anyway. I have been putting so much emphasis on this bike training that I started to feel the time pressure of just fitting in enough strength training. And in general, I like to do some sort of strength training 3 times a week. And I've been really consistent with that for many years. And I feel strong and I'm preventing my injuries and it's great. But with all of this time spent on the saddle and the bike, I'm like, how do I fit in a 3rd session? I'm barely able to fit in 2 and not feel the time pressure. And I started to get really down on myself. Angie, you have to fit 3. If you want to stay strong and you don't want to get injured, you need 3 strength training sessions. And I started to notice that voice in my head. And I was like, that's not even true. I can definitely still be strong and prevent injury on 2. Most Americans aren't even getting 2 strength training sessions. So noticing when those voices pop up, I think I'm noticing them and I'm able to self-coach my way through them and, help myself get to a better mindset. But I am really afraid of what it would look like to give my all to something. And, I don't track my sleep because I'm afraid I'll overanalyze it. I don't even know how much I weigh, right? Like there's so many things around numbers that I'm afraid would be triggering. I don't know whether or not they would be, but like if I tried really hard for a goal, some of those numbers are going to pop up and I'm afraid of what could happen. So
yeah, numbers are definitely tricky. And often like when I'm working with someone, like numbers are helpful. Like sometimes I try to shield my client from numbers as much as I can. Like if someone is a little bit, not a fear, but it is a little bit more triggering to see certain numbers or work with numbers. And then we're really just speaking in food terms. And other people really want to know the numbers, or numbers are helpful, at least as an educational tool until they get more comfortable with like the visuals of foods and stuff. But yeah, I think people can definitely go down the rabbit hole of like tracking and analyzing and collecting all this information. And while it can be helpful, it can really be distracting from the things that matter most. And as you say, it's shiny objects, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, I think making sure you're like focusing on all the really like basic important things before you kind of get distracted by all these other things. I find that that's often helpful. I'm curious if, you're talking about kind of this voice, that critical voice, I guess, the critic voice that you're basically describing. Does that come up for you with food anymore? Like with food choices or anything like that, or not so much anymore?
So I thought it didn't affect me at all. And it was 2 weeks before the 100-mile race. And my friend was running this race with me. We had trained most of our long runs together. It was this beautiful, idyllic, like two friends running and training together situation. And both of us have similar pasts with a lot of these struggles. And we've been very open about talking about how we've moved beyond that and how running has helped us move beyond those struggles. And we were feeling so proud of ourselves. Like, look at us, we're having chocolate milk and Coca-Cola and like still like we're feeling great. And then my running plan that we had both been following, we had purchased from a company that I really actually like. They would have little notes on every day's training run. And at the very start of the taper, there was a training note in the workout for that day when we were running together that said, a lot of runners gain weight before their race during the taper. Make sure that you're cutting your calories by 20% during the taper. And when I read that, all of a sudden, for the first time in training, all these doubts hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, have I been feeling myself wrong? Am I going to mess up everything in the taper? Is this going to make me not finish the race? And I was like, whoa, what is happening? Like all of these doubts out of nowhere. So I text my friend and she saw it too. And she was going through the same exact experience. And both of us, thankfully, since we understood where each other were coming from, were able to, have that solidarity and talk each other out of that negative mindset. But it really, for a few days, like was clouding our judgment in our brains. And actually months after the race, I ended up emailing the training company and I sent them this, 3-paragraph essay about why that was problematic and wrong, like biologically wrong. And I was expecting them to be like, oh no, you're sensitive to this because of your history. Like you're just this woman, you're not trained, blah, 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 blah. And instead they sent me this really kind email about how like, wow, you're right. This is very problematic. It's going to be removed from all training plan. I mean, this was like a highlight of 2024, just that one email seeing like, okay,
that's awesome.
Like my experience and sharing that story like made a difference for hopefully other people. But yeah, so I would say like, if you had asked me a few months ago, I would have been like, no, I don't struggle, but clearly I do. Like something like that will pop up and it really takes that intentional self-coaching to get beyond it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have the tools and the knowledge and just knowing how to take care of yourself, right? When something like that happens. But yeah, I mean, and I mean, I think this is normal. Like no one's ever like recovered, right? From anything. It's always a process. And even for me, like I have similar instances that, things pop up or, I realize I haven't been intentionally eating a food, not like I haven't been intentionally avoiding it, but it's just been kind of like mayonnaise for the longest time after I was quote unquote like in recovery from my eating disorder. Like I just never ate it, not because I was trying not to eat it, but like I think I thought I didn't like it or something, and I was like, I like it. It's great. Like I put it on all kinds of stuff, So it's funny how things like that. It just it just takes time, but
Totally.
yeah. So you have your bike race, you have all that stuff. Is there anything else you kind of want to mention about yourself or you think that would be interesting for my audience to hear about you?
maybe I can use this as get a free tip from Claire. So I do know, like, the numbers that I do have is I did a test, a blood test, sometime in the past year, because I am a vegetarian and I generally feel great. I never liked meat anyway. I remember picky eater as a kid. And so I don't eat meat. I don't eat fish. Love dairy, love eggs. I'm like, I think I get enough protein. I feel great. I don't have any weird symptoms. However, I got my blood test back and I know that I'm on the very low end of acceptable for vitamin D and ferritin. And I'm just like, how do I know how do I know if I'm getting enough? I'm not going to pay for another blood test in the next few months. Like, what are some foods that are like running compatible that could help me with what I'm low in?
Did you get an iron panel as well?
I think so. I know for sure that the ferritin was the low one.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't like analyze the whole thing because I don't have the full picture of labs, right? But I mean, yeah, generally ferritin can be low for so many different reasons. Well, actually, let's start with vitamin D. So vitamin D is like a really tricky one because we know that it's not available in lots of foods, especially if, you are more vegetarian, more plant-based. But, and then at certain times of the year, it's dark or you're not getting the sunlight because the sunlight, of course, is our primary source of vitamin D we make in the skin. So if you're not getting outside as much, or it's a certain time of year, or you're wearing sunscreen, covering up, you're just not even going outside, whatever, you just might not be getting the sun exposure that you need. So something like vitamin D is one of like the more commonly supplemented vitamins that we see. And we know that you don't want it to be too low, especially for athletes. It's important for calcium absorption. So for bone health, it plays an important role in a million different things. So yeah, that is a very commonly supplemented vitamin, but we don't ever, just for any listeners, please make sure you get your vitamin D checked before just randomly supplementing. You don't want to ever just like randomly supplement vitamin D. It's a fat soluble vitamin and too much is not good. So yeah, that might be one. If it's like low, then that might be one you want to supplement, at a low-ish dose throughout the winter and get retested, in a few months' time or something like that. And I mean, of course, like talk to your doctor. And yeah, ferritin is a really tricky one, or iron. So ferritin's the storage form of iron. I literally was just on another podcast. We spent an entire hour talking all about ferritin and iron on Elevate Your Running. So go check that out if you want to hear me talk about iron and ferritin for an entire hour. But, there are lots of reasons why ferritin can be low or iron generally can be low. And, sometimes it is inadequate intake or inadequate iron intake. A lot of the times we see issues with like actual gut absorption. So maybe you are getting enough, but like you're not absorbing, because it's not just iron. There are tons of other micronutrients that play really key roles in iron metabolism, including getting iron into the storage form, i.e. ferritin. So sometimes it could be some sort of like gut issue. That's sometimes where like a stool test is really helpful, like the GI map test, which is a PCR stool test, where we can kind of analyze like what's going on there. Yeah, there are lots of, and then like you do have, or you are at higher risk as a female endurance athlete, right? So if you're getting your period and you have the foot strike hemolysis, we are losing it in blood, sweat, and feces. So like, or not in blood, sorry, in urine. You're not losing blood, hopefully. Well, I guess you are if you're a woman. So blood, yeah, I guess, okay. So blood, sweat, urine, and feces. There you go. All the fluids. So yeah, it's one of these things where like iron is just so tricky. So like depending on, like we look at not just ferritin, but we look at, your serum iron, your TIBC, your iron saturation. We look at CRP, which is an inflammation marker. And the other thing to note is like sometimes ferritin can be affected by like if you did a big workout or something like that. Since it's low, I'm not too worried. Sometimes it can be falsely elevated as well. So it's like the timing of when you're getting your ferritin tested can be important. But yeah, so we're usually like looking at ferritin in the context of everything, because sometimes people will have like a normal high or even high serum iron, but a really low ferritin. And so you wouldn't want to supplement iron in that case, because iron is also toxic if you take too much in. So yeah, I'll just say, without going too deep down this hole, ferritin it's a fascinating and really complicated, tricky situation, but definitely one you want to check out, because with athletes, the quote unquote normal range is like massive. Mm-hmm. But for athletes, we really want to be ideally above 40 or even 50 for endurance athletes. If you're at altitude, definitely on the higher end. So yeah, that's definitely one for you to work on.
Yeah. Well, I know next time I need some blood work done, I'll just hire you and we'll have a few sessions. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Angie, thank you so much for all of this. Actually, I'm going to do some quick bites questions, and then I'm going to have you share where everyone can find you in your work. So, okay. Favorite post-race meal or snack?
Chocolate milk.
Nice. What is your worst race nutrition experience?
Ooh. Can it count as the gel that I tried during training?
Yes,
really
that
don't
you,
like the
barfed up.
gels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever had a cooking catastrophe?
Yes. So went to Everest Base Camp for my 30th birthday. It was amazing. And I had great digestion up until the day I left Nepal, picked up something weird. And unfortunately, I had scheduled a cooking class. So while I was sick, I had to force myself to go through a cooking class in Kathmandu. It was really hard.
Oh gosh. Yikes. Not fun. What is the most adventurous food you've ever tried?
Well, also in Nepal, as a vegetarian, I tried a bit of local goat because, again, that adventurous mindset, even though I don't eat meat, I get curious. And once in a while, I try a bite and I don't like it.
You don't like it?
The spices, though, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. How do you like your eggs cooked?
Scrambled, only scrambled. Yep. But I love them.
What is your favorite beverage?
Beverage? Ooh. Should I just say chocolate milk? Actually, no, I take that back. A latte, which is close.
There you go. What are your comfort foods?
I usually go for a chocolate sweet of some sort. I love a good dessert, even if it's just
So you like chocolate, I'm hearing.
I do. Chocolate milk, chocolate latte, all of it.
I know. Chocolate's so good.
You know what? Lately,
What is
just this past week, it's been dates with chocolate chips and peanut butter. So good.
I love dates so much. Yum. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? Is it also chocolate?
It would definitely have chocolate in it. I'm like Ben and Jerry's with like all the fillings for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, last question. Top 3 items of gear that are most essential to your active, adventurous lifestyle.
Okay. 1, my big floppy sun hat. I have worn my big, beautiful straw hat at the bottom of the Grand Canyon and at the top of Mount Adams. And if you, Justin the Ranger, are listening, I did not appreciate that you didn't like my hat, and it actually didn't blow off, and it was great. So take that, Justin. Floppy sun hat. Number 2, love a down skirt. I like these for when I'm camping.
Down skirt?
Yeah. So I have like 2.
I didn't know that existed.
One of them's like a mini skirt and one of them is a double zip, longer knee length skirt. And for camping, when I'm sitting around, they save my life. They can be like double up as a little, cuddle up like a blanket. So down skirt. And I want to get really cheesy and just say like a smile because I don't know, you and I have been smiling this whole conversation. And to me, that's so contagious. And my favorite running memories have all been around us making jokes on the trail or like looking at another runner and being like, what the hell is this hill? I can't believe we're doing this. We choose to do this, but we're smiling as we're suffering. Yeah. And something about that is just really fun to me.
I love those. Oh my goodness. Also, now I know that down skirts exist and I might need to go get one.
I secondhanded both of them. So like definitely check. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure those are expensive. So yeah, totally. Where can everyone find you online? What else do you want to shout out? What other projects do you got going on that you want to share?
I am so fascinated, as you can tell, by the intersection of womanhood and outdoor adventure sports. And I've been writing about that more on my Substack, which is bloodsweatfear.substack.com. And this is where I've really found a home to merge my passions with menstrual cycles and outdoor sports and storytelling. So you can follow me there. My book about menstrual cycles is at www.itsangiemarie.com/book. And this is more of like a mindset book on using the menstrual cycle as a creative process. So if you're like, what? Definitely check that out. I also have my own podcast. It's called For the Love Of, and we explore the trade-offs that people make in order to pursue their big adventurous passions. So that's fortheloveofpod.com.
Awesome. And you are on Instagram, right?
I am, yeah. I'm having the big reckoning with social media like everyone else in this country right now, but seriously. It's at Angie versus Wild, Angie vs WILD, and I still do post things occasionally there. I'm just trying not to scroll as much because it's sad out there.
I know. I need to stop. It's like, it really is a problem, the scrolling.
Yeah. Well, I also feel like, though, this is like, everybody's going through this reckoning of like, what are we consuming in our digital media and what are we sharing ourselves? And I think this is such a good reminder and opportunity for us to go back to basics and get out in person in your community and find what you liked on social media and then go find it in real life in person, because that's what's going to help our communities get healthier and happier.
I love that. Awesome. Angie, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here. And have an amazing trip.
Thank you.
You're going tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'm driving up to Seattle tomorrow for dog care, and then I'm flying out Sunday morning. So it's all, it's
awesome.
Back to back. But
all right. Well, have the best time. And I hope you have an amazing bike race as well.
Thank you.
All right, that's what I have for you guys today. Before you go, if you haven't already given my show a rating or review, I would just be so grateful if you would take a quick minute to do that. And of course, if you know anybody, any friends or family, other loved ones who you think would enjoy the show, forward my episode. I would really, really appreciate it. If you would like to get 20% off over at Scratch Labs, you can use my affiliate code EAT4Endurance20. That helps to support my free content. You can find other affiliate links over on the shop page of my website, eatforendurance.com. And of course, if you ever want to get in touch with feedback or or topic requests or anything like that, feel free to email me, Claire at eatforendurance.com. All right, see you guys next time.